Good evening. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Ian. I really enjoyed your presentation, full of wisdom, of decades of experience, and it's just wonderful. And I hope we can get to know each other more. I lived in the UK for 12 years, actually. Our three sons were born in London. So I feel quite at home there. Now we are in cyberspace. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, I truly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about media bias and how it affects religious minority groups. And it is great to have distinguished media professionals and friends on this panel. I also would like to commend UPF UK and Robin for this initiative. My opening, I'd like to dive straight into some serious cases in Rwanda as a wake-up call. In 2024, Rwanda inspected about 13,000 places of worship. Within weeks, over 7,000 churches were closed. Some reports put the figure close to 10,000 in just 2 months. The government spoke of safety standards and compliance, but what about the ordinary believers? For them, it meant locked doors, silenced pastors, scattered communities. And the media? Most outlets simply repeated the government's line. They reported state control, but not the denial of religious freedom. In Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, calls of freedom of opinion and expression as a cornerstone of democracy. As a journalist myself, I know how precious this is. Without it, no accountability, no transparency, no informed citizens. But with freedom comes responsibility. The media doesn't only report reality, it frames it. Word choice, images, headlines, they shape public opinion. That framing can protect democracy. But when it becomes biased, it legitimizes repression and weakens democracy from within. One of the clearest dangers is language. Minority religions are casually branded as sects or cults. Let's be blunt. For believers, being called a sect member is as devastating as the N-word is for people of color. It wounds, it stigmatizes, and yet the media loves to use it. They just love it. Sometimes 10, 15 times in a single article, they use this S-word, the sects. In fact, recently, the Austrian National Broadcasting Station aired a report of 2 minutes, and they used this word 13 times. Behind much of this stands a hostile, well-organized lobby, anti-cut networks like Fikris, which have worked for decades to discredit minority religions. Their talking points are repeated by journalists until prejudice becomes common sense. Let's talk about France. The state-sponsored Miviludes circulates blacklists of so-called sects. Media repeats them uncritically. Suddenly, yoga groups, Pentecostals, Buddhists, New Christian movements are stigmatized. In Germany, Hare Krishna devotees were written off as a youth sect in the 1980s. The label spread and harassment followed. In Russia, the Jehovah's Witnesses were demonized for years in state media, then banned outright in 2017 as extremists. 200,000 believers, believe it or not, 200,000 believers stripped of their rights and their places of worship were locked, confiscated, or torn down. Words matter, labels matter. Once normalized, they paved the way for state repression. And here's the question. If we wouldn't tolerate slurs against Jews or Muslims, why do we tolerate them against smaller or newer religions? So let's talk about headlines. Headlines are even more powerful. Research shows that 60 to 70% of readers never read beyond the title or subtitle of an article. And choosy, catchy headlines grab people's attention. As it says in the secret motto of the yellow press, it smells, but it sells. In 2022, the BBC published Japan asks court to dissolve Muni's church over Shinzo Abe killing. And a few of these headlines followed in the same year. Very similar headlines. What impression does that leave, ladies and gentlemen? What do you think when you read that? For millions, the takeaway was simple. This church killed Japan's prime minister. It's very obvious. The truth, the assassin was a lone individual with no organizational ties. Yet the headline fused killing with the name of a faith community. That's character assassination by a headline. And because it came from the BBC, the smear echoed worldwide. Here again, the media didn't just report, it shaped global perception. Now I'd like to talk about a few global case studies, just a brief selection of a vast pool of reports. But because of time, I can only mention a few. Nigeria and Africa. Between 2019 and 2023, nearly 56,000 people were killed in religiously motivated violence and 21,000 abducted. The victims were mostly Christians. This summer, in the Yelwata massacre, maybe you've heard of it, maybe not, 200 Christians were slaughtered and 3,000 displaced. And how did Western mainstream media react? With shocking silence. These massacres are reduced to ethnic clashes or farmer-herder disputes. By hiding the religious dimension, the press hides the truth. And when the media hides the truth, the world looks away. Now, about China. The Communist Party has mastered the state propaganda to its perfection. Uyghur Muslims, Tibetan Buddhists, Falun Gong, and Christian house churches are branded as cults or terrorists. By the state media, of course. Once labeled, they are no longer seen as citizens with rights, but as threats to be eradicated. What about Hungary, my neighbor country? In 2010, Viktor Orban stripped recognition from more than 350 churches. Did you hear about it? I guess no. And what did the media do? It stayed silent. Their logic was simple. Attacks on religious groups are not a press freedom issue. But the fact is, that the opposite is true. Articles 18 and 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which means freedom of religion and freedom of expression, they belong together. They are inseparable. Two sides of the same medal. When one goes, the other soon follows. And sure enough, when Viktor Orban moved on to clamp down on independent journalism, many media professionals suddenly realized it was too late to act against what had begun already years earlier. Now about South Korea. Suspicion of minority religions remains strong on the peninsula. Earlier this year, even the Full Gospel Church, one of the world's largest Pentecostal congregations, faced hostile coverage. And Dr. Hak Chan Moon, the co-founder of the Universal Peace Federation, actually the sponsor of this very webinar we are in here, was placed in pre-trial detention just weeks after heart surgery. She is not young. She is an 80-year-old widow and peace builder. Instead of questioning this extraordinary measure, much of the press recycled old stereotypes, even here in the UK and in Europe. Across Africa, Asia, and Europe, the pattern repeats. Biased reporting leads to stigma. Stigma leads to government overreach. And ultimately, freedom is lost. So, what about responsibility? What can we do? For journalists, as already Ian mentioned a few very important points, verify before publishing. Use neutral, not stigmatizing language. Give minorities a voice, not only their critics. And to regulators and public broadcasters, watch for systematic bias, not just for slip-ups. Remember, taxpayer-funded media must serve all citizens. That even includes religious minorities. And of course, other minorities. And what can we suggest to the civil authorities and faith communities? Don't be passive. Monitor coverage. Respond quickly and factually. Build archives of positive stories. Peace work. Humanitarian aid. Interfaith dialogue. If hostile networks can flood journalists with negative clippings, why shouldn't we flood them with truth and hope? Why not? You see, this is why IMAP exists. We are not here to silence critics. Scrutiny is vital for democracy. But scrutiny must be fair, balanced, and responsible. When media bias targets religious minorities, it doesn't just harm those groups. It undermines democracy itself. If a free press should defend the vulnerable, a free press should defend the vulnerable, not endanger them. It should strengthen democracy, not weaken it. That is journalism at its best. And it is IMAP's mission. As Gandhi reminded us, the true measure of democracy is how it treats its weakest members. That includes, of course, the freedoms it protects for its smallest and most vulnerable communities. And let us never forget, when the media is silent in the face of injustice, silence itself becomes complicity. Thank you for listening.